In this video, we're going to be breaking down some of the challenges of living here in Florida. And I'll talk to you about how I personally deal with some of these issues. If you're new to my channel, my name's Krista and I'm a realtor here in Central Florida, selling homes in cities such as these to people just like yourself. If you find you have specific questions that you'd like to discuss with me, my contact information is always below these videos. I would be super happy to help you out. If you want to reach out to me, that would be super. Please also consider subscribing to my channel and clicking that like button, as it does help my video to get out and find other people just like yourself. Okay, let's jump right into it. A common comment that I hear from buyers all the time is that they don't want to live in an area that gets affected by hurricanes or flooding. But I hate to break it to you, severe weather is kind of a way of life here in Florida. Yesterday, for example, I was out in Daytona Beach. I checked my GPS and I had a little notification on there that there was a severe thunderstorm warning for the area. I looked up to the skies. The clouds were not ominous at all, and I was completely confused. I left Daytona, I was heading down I-4, and it began to rain. I got to Sanford, which is my next destination, and the rain was super noisy, and after a few seconds, I finally realized it was hail. And I ended up taking refuge underneath a bank that's no longer open, where they have one of those drive-throughs, so it was a roof covering. I sat there for a bit and rode out the storm. I ended up riding out the entire storm there. We've had flooding in my area as a result of storms that lasted for just an hour. If storm drains are blocked and the rain is particularly heavy, it can flood. We had one storm, I guess it was probably about 2 years ago, where within an hour of torrential rain, some streets were completely impassable. I'm not talking about like life-threatening floods like we had in Southwest Florida during Hurricane Ian last year. I'm talking about getting like 2 or 3 inches of water seeping into your home and ruining your flooring, maybe your bathroom vanities, your sofas, etc. It can do a lot of damage very, very quickly if you don't have flood insurance. And if you don't have flood insurance, that damage isn't going to be covered. All this to say that flooding isn't always associated with hurricanes. Flooding is also not necessarily caused by living near a body of water. Those heavy rainstorms we get in the summers in Florida almost on a daily basis can cause flooding anywhere at almost any time. And hurricanes, well, you learn how to prep for them. So you maybe buy a generator, you buy ice, you buy food that doesn't spoil, or you leave. I know people who just go rent a hotel room in Central Florida and kind of make it a little vacation as they feel uneasy at home and they feel safer there. If you haven't yet moved to Florida, here are some things to consider to keep yourself protected from this crazy weather. It's better to be living in a community with electrical wires underground, as you are much less likely to lose power. All of Florida is a flood zone, but flood zone X is the least likely to flood and won't require flood insurance. You can still buy flood insurance if you want to have it, and if your home is in flood zone X, it won't be all that expensive. New construction is also less likely to flood, as the builders always raise up that ground base nice and high before they start building. And finally, this might come as a surprise to you if you're not living here now, but most people in Central Florida really don't board up their windows or have hurricane shutters. They're a pain to install, they're a pain to remove, and they're difficult to store. So I guess it comes down to, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a winter of this, or a hurricane season where you may not have a storm at all? Now let's talk about a second major challenge that Floridians face, and that is population growth. Florida is full is a comment that I read all the time on forums where people are talking about moving to Florida. As I mentioned in my last video, which you can see here, I talked about how Florida gained 320,000 people last year. A lot of Florida's growth in recent years was due to the fact that during the pandemic, people started working from home and they decided, what am I doing here in this state? I'm done. I'm going to go sit by my pool with my laptop and work from home in a nicer climate. So as a result, the locals down here in Florida are complaining bitterly about traffic. Now, I personally am not really affected by that as much, as I can basically schedule around rush hour. I don't have to hit it for the most part. But where I do see extra people is on like drives to the beach on the weekends, or down near the theme parks. It's almost always trafficy. Trying to get into a popular restaurant without a reservation because I'm spontaneous like that. Sometimes trying to find parking in really popular areas is also becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Of course, the influx of people from states where real estate is more expensive has also led to an increase in our housing prices, both in terms of rent and purchases. Now, I'm not a native Floridian. I have lived in London, in Eastern Europe, Washington, D.C., rural Virginia, and South Central Pennsylvania. But for me, traffic during a blizzard in Eastern Europe was much scarier than even being on I-4. Well, maybe. Our third challenge, politics, a rather divisive issue in Florida, as you may already know. But how that plays out in daily life is pretty interesting. Florida was once a swing state, and it's now much more red. In Orlando, however, it tends to be more blue, as do most of the major cities in Florida. And trust me, I've heard people complain that Florida is too liberal, and I've heard people complain that Florida is too conservative. Liberals are always concerned that there are too many conservatives moving here, and conservatives are concerned that there are too many liberals moving here. So as you can see, while we have slightly more Republican registered voters in Florida, the difference isn't huge. And I personally find that if you have a strong opinion on one side, you're probably going to notice those who have a strong opposing opinion, and you can certainly find strong opinions on either side of the political fence in Florida. Here's a little sample political map from the 2022 election results in Florida that show how DeSantis won over Democrat Charlie Crist. You'll see that the Democrat voting centers were in the major cities, which I'm sure is no surprise. So whatever your political leanings, choose your area carefully if that's a big concern for you. I'm trying to come up with helpful examples from real life that I've noticed, and I do know one family actually did pack up and they left, I believe, for South Carolina, as they felt that Florida had become too liberal. If you find that Florida is either too liberal or too conservative, I'm here for you either way. If you want to get out, please reach out to me below, and I'll be thrilled to help you sell. Let's move on to something that we can pretty much all agree on is bad, and that is the bugs and pests. When I moved from Pennsylvania to Virginia for college, I was shocked by some of the bugs I saw. The further south you go, the bigger and more terrifying the pests seem to get. So I had no idea what I was in store for in Central Florida. But after living in Eastern Europe for 10 years, where I can't really even remember like seeing any bugs, I guess because it's so far north and so cold, I was kind of appalled at the insect life here. We have lizards, but they run away in terror as soon as you move like 1 millimeter near them. And we have giant cockroaches we refer to as palmetto bugs, which are in fact the most disgusting bug on the earth, and they can fly, and they are terrible and awful, and I don't even like to talk about them because they just completely skeeve me out. This year, my yard has been taken over by lubbers, I think they're called, which are these horrible yellow grasshoppers that can grow to be 4 inches long and will eat every plant in your yard in the course of a night. Doesn't that sound like fun? Here's an important topic: gators. Alligators play much less of a role in daily life than northerners ever imagine. We stay away from them, they stay away from us. Having said that, I do have a video where I'm showing a house to a man from New York, and maybe half an hour after telling him that gators don't pose much of a threat, we saw one in a swimming pool at the house I was showing him. I told people that this doesn't happen. I'll post a link if you'd like to check that out. I live near a lake. I do see gators from time to time, but they are chilling in the water with just their little noses and eyes sticking out, and not chasing me around. You'll want to be careful swimming in fresh water, and you may want to rethink that black bottom swimming pool because it makes it hard to see if there would happen to be a gator at the bottom. We have black bears, we have coyotes, both of which I think are a much bigger threat than alligators. Doesn't that make you feel better? I think above and beyond everything else, though, the heat might just be the most terrible factor in Florida. Florida's weather is known for its extreme heat and humidity, which can be intolerable for many people. The temperature often rises well above 90 during the summer months, making it difficult to enjoy outdoor activities or even go outside without feeling constantly drained and uncomfortable. The humidity also exacerbates the heat, causing people to feel even hotter and more uncomfortable. You know how there's a wind chill factor? Well, here there's like a hot factor, and if it's 90 but it's really humid, it feels like 104. And it can be a source of anxiety for residents here. Additionally, the frequent thunderstorms and hurricanes can be a source of anxiety for people living in Florida, further adding to the stress of living here. These factors, coupled with the lack of change in seasons, can lead people to move away from the state in search of 4 seasons and a more comfortable climate. Overall, there are many reasons why people choose to move away from Florida, and those include the high cost of living, crowded cities, traffic, extreme heat and humidity, bugs, politics. That's just a few of the factors that contribute to the decision to leave. Florida's vulnerability, of course, to natural disasters like hurricanes and flooding, even sinkholes, which we didn't even talk about, can also create anxiety and stress for residents. While Florida has its charms, it is clear that it is not for everyone, and ultimately, the decision to move away from Florida is a personal one, and individuals must weigh the pros and cons of living in this state to determine if it's right for them. I think also setting the right expectations before you move here will help you tolerate what you may end up perceiving as negatives. Thanks for watching.